Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, Campbell. How are you?
Good guy. How you doing, mate?
Very good. Thank you. Thanks for joining me. I wanted to ask you what you thought linked sci-fi, the works of Jules Verne, H.G. Wells, and people like that, to Tartarian technology, and if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Um,
Pleasure.
yeah, Jules
Nice for you
Verne,
to
yeah,
be on mine instead of me. I'm always on yours.
I know, right? Yeah. Got to balance it out. Yeah, Jules Verne, interesting guy, right? So he was writing what, 1880-ish, is that right?
Yeah.
And definitely he was writing about submarines and all these underground cities and all this different tech that really for that time, at least, with the story we're told, was pretty sort of fantastical stuff, right? So I would say that he's definitely, got stories, either stories from the old world or he's seen tech or he's heard, what they've recovered and he's written about it. Was he one of them? Was that his job? I mean, we all know Jules Verne, right? I mean, he's one of the biggest sort of authors ever, right? He's one of those names. So yeah, it's an interesting one. Like I think it definitely, and knowing what we know, he was probably part of, the Allies. But why do they always disclose all this stuff to us, do you think? Like what use is putting all these books out and fantastical stuff when they're kind of it seems like they're exposing themselves a bit, right?
Yeah, it does. Like I've asked this on Facebook a few times, just put posts up saying, why do you think they tell us all this stuff? And most people say karmic retribution. That's the fear that when they meet their maker, they'll say that you didn't disclose anything to them. Yeah, and they can say, well, we did, but we did it in the movies or works of fiction. And it's for them to decide whether or not they can decipher some truth from it. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely heard that. I mean, obviously we don't have any proof for that, but I mean, it's not much of an excuse, is it, when you're meeting your maker and he's like, you imprisoned, enslaved, and unalived all these people, and you're like, but we wrote it in a book. It's like, I don't think that would, sort of get you out of your karma. I mean, I sort of tend to go more for, there's a line in the Bible that says you will know them because they are arrogant. And I always think of that line when I think of them. And I think that's it. I think it's just
Mm,
shoving it in our face and it's kind of a behind the scenes joke. And I guess the other thing is with Jules Verne in 1880, how many, commoners could read or even get access to books like that? So who were the books really for, I guess?
do you think that they were sharing them amongst themselves?
Probably. When you think about it, at least with the story we're told, most people would have been illiterate, and if even if they weren't, like they wouldn't have had easy access to books. I mean, I guess in the cities, 1880s, there'd start to be bookshops and that, but yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thought, right? Was it just to sort of educate their family bloodlines about, the tech that is out there or was out there, or that maybe they're still using, right? We've had a lot
Yeah.
of talk about submarines.
Mm.
I think there was a certain, imprisoned man who got unalived's girlfriend. Can't say any of the names, obviously, but she was the submarine driver,
Yeah, she
pilot.
was. She was.
Yeah. And
You've
they
just
also
reminded
have islands, so I don't know, right?
old Richard Branson owns a lot of the islands around there. And
Yes, Richard Branson. Yeah. I haven't heard from him for a while. I was thinking about him the other day.
no, he owns
Good.
most of the private abortion clinics in the UK as well. And then I think of the red,
Really?
this red or scarlet woman on his Virgin logo. And
And of course it's called Virgin.
it makes me wonder,
Yeah.
should we be looking into him?
Yeah, well, yes. Yes, we should, I think. I was
Mm.
thinking about it the other day because I was thinking about, the whole new favorite pastime for billionaires is to create a space company, right?
Yeah, and take
And
Katy Perry to the moon.
yeah, yeah. Um, because we've got obviously Elon.
Mm.
Now we've got Amazon man, what's his name?
Jeff
Forgotten.
Bezos.
Jeff Bezos. And that made me think of Virgin Galactic, remember that
Hmm.
was launched about 10 years ago or something, and it's sort
Yeah.
of faded away. We haven't heard a lot about it.
No,
And
we
then
haven't. No, you're
I,
right.
I saw another video talking about the Vril thing that they might put in people's
Oh,
heads
behind their eye, isn't it?
behind their eyes,
Yeah,
and
is it their
black
left
eye.
eye? Mm.
And there was a big picture of Richard Branson with his massive big black eye. And I was like, oh, Richard. Because he was always put up as one of the cool guys, right? He was sort of
Yeah.
the nice guy, full of people, same old story, right? Started
Hmm.
his record company in the garage, no money, came across, one sort of band. I forgot who was it, Sex Pistols he started, maybe?
No, that was Malcolm McLaren.
So I know he got one early band and
Yeah,
apparently,
he did. Yeah, I can't remember who it is, but he
yeah,
used
yeah.
to. I used to live in Cambridge, and that's where he started selling records. There's a market there, in a place called Lion's Yard, and that's how he started selling records. He had a little stall there, but he got expelled for selling weed at Stowe School, which is a really famous private school here that was allegedly designed by Lord Buckingham, who allegedly designed Buckingham Palace, and they mirror each other.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the two buildings. Yeah, Stowe
Yeah.
School. Yeah, I had a friend that went there.
Wow. Same
Mm.
machine, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Same machine. Yeah,
Machine twice.
but I think it's a bit. Bill Richard Branson is a bit like Bill Gates in that when they're not in the news, that's the time to be wondering what they're up to.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's kind of disappeared, so I'm wondering when he's going to pop back out. No doubt there'll be another pop star in space or something soon.
A lot of people link Jeff Bezos and Amazon to the Freemasons, and a few people have said to me, Amazon is a Mason. And I think, well, if you look at the history of Amazon, they started off as an online secondhand book retailer. Yes, I'm sure he's been got at, but that isn't how it started, is it? It seemed like quite an innocent,
All
legitimate
do
business.
though. They all do though. This is the thing when we look into these stories, they're kind of all the same.
Yeah,
Apple started in their garage. I think IBM was started in a garage. Like they all. It's just the story that they're all these, sort of middle class, misfit sort of type people, and they just find a best friend or a group, and they have an idea, and they create this business that, within sort of a decade is worth $1 billion or something.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, so I mean, I think, to become a billionaire, I think you need to be in the club.
yeah.
Uh,
I think so.
Especially, Amazon has so much power in it, and it's clearly part of their agenda, right? Like the
Mm,
online shopping and the closing down of
mm,
shops, the controlling of retail and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that may have been where he started, but I'm sure he got a lot of help.
yeah.
Um, he got the best deals. He got money injected because how do they grow so fast? You need
Yeah.
money to grow, right?
It
And
did
so,
grow overnight, didn't it, really?
yeah, yeah, and think of the amount of warehouses they would have and the amount of land they'd have to own, and
Mm,
then all the processing stuff, all the automation, like it's just to expand into a new warehouse, be $1 billion,
yeah.
something like. So I just think that they all have their good stories. I'm sure they're loosely based on the truth, but I don't think
Loosely.
loosely, yeah. And there's
Yeah.
the good guys and the bad guys, and but it's all a show, I think, in the end.
J.K. Rowling, I mean, her backstory is a bit of a strange one, isn't it? She was unemployed, living in a little flat or bed sitting Scotland, and I don't buy any of that.
Yeah, okay. Is that her story? I haven't read that one. I
Yeah, I
mean
don't
that
buy that.
that story's been done before as well, right? Like the single parent who just sort of starts something. I know I've heard some, I can't recall the names, but I think it's the same, right? They just recycle stories. They're not good at it. They don't have
Mm.
much imagination, apart from when it comes to science fiction, maybe. What are your thoughts on science fiction?
I had a look at Jules Verne a couple of weeks ago. I was digging into him, but what I didn't realize at the time was that he was a member of an elite organization, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And they're linked to the Rosicrucians, the Illuminati, and the Freemasons. And H.G. Wells and Aleister Crowley were members as well. So
That's
it's the same people, isn't it? I mean, Aleister Crowley, H.G. Wells, Jules Verne, all members of the same club, all
yeah.
talking about or writing about advanced technology, going into space, going to the moon. There's something there, isn't there? And there are links with that society to the Priory of Sion as well.
Wow.
So
Yeah, I mean, it's one big club, right? And we hang
yeah,
in it.
yeah, it is, isn't it? Same old story. But I just find it strange that H.G. Wells and Jules Verne, in particular, are members of a secret society linked to the Illuminati and the Freemasons, and Aleister Crowley is a member. There's too much there.
Well, and like you said, there's they have space books, right?
Mm,
H.G. Wells did the time travel. What was that called?
yeah, I
The
can't
time.
remember. Mm,
You know. And Aleister Crowley, if you look into JPL, founder of JPL rocketry in America, which is linked to NASA. He's associated with Crowley. Like Crowley's, linked to the creation of NASA, right? And NASA is the science fiction, right? The space stories. I
yeah.
mean, and we saw it just the other day with Katy Perry, right? But like, and they're pushing it, right? This whole space narrative, we're going to Mars, right? Elon is going to Mars, and of course, Elon turns up in a science fiction book as the
Yeah,
lead character of someone who goes to Mars.
yeah. You've
So
seen that book? 'Cause Warner von Braun wrote that, didn't he?
well, yeah, Warner
I've
von
I've
Braun,
not read it.
who created NASA with Walt Disney, basically, and
Yeah,
JPL. And he was, of course, from Germany in the war, rocketry, and then so everything's just connected, right? Then you go to that whole narrative and how they were searching for ancient tech and
mm,
the stories of Admiral Byrd down at the ice wall in Antarctica and UFOs popping out of the ocean, and
yeah.
you know, so there's this big theme, isn't there? So I mean, I guess it's a good question: is why, like, why are they promoting this space? I mean, obviously, a lot of people say, well, the ball's a trap, and it makes you feel insignificant and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, could there be another reason you think that they're sort of putting all these ideas in our minds, especially when, this year drones appeared in the sky, there's plasma
Mm.
balls, there's a lot of talk about this kind of stuff.
I don't know. I don't know. But my gut is that whenever they've told us to look up, that we should look down. Because I think everything's inverted. But what's going on up there? I am a believer in the firmament, but of course, scientifically, it's the Van Allen belt. It is a belt of radiation. I don't know if we can get through it or not, but scientists say that it can't be penetrated.
Astronauts can get through it though, like because they weren't told it was there. You've seen that interview?
I have seen that, yeah. Yeah, I mean the whole moon landing is a strange one. When you see the press conference when they get back, I mean they don't look like a group of people that have just stepped on the moon for the first time. They look so pissed off. They look desperately unhappy, don't they?
Yeah, yeah. And there was an astronaut who was supposed to be one of the first on the moon, one of that crew, and he apparently was talking and he yeah burned in a rocket. Basically, was in a rocket and they blew it up. Is the story. And then there are of course all Freemasons, and then Buzz Aldrin. he's on a lot of video now where he's saying, no, we didn't go to the moon. We didn't
Is that
go.
yeah, the clip where he's talking to that girl inside, yeah,
It's one of
yeah,
them. Yep, yep.
yeah.
You go, and that's how it happened, you know. And then he's another one. He's I think it was with Conan O'Brien or something, Conan saying, "I saw it on TV," and he's like, "No, no, you didn't. It wasn't live." He was like, "It didn't happen." So I mean, the whole moon thing and the Van Allen's belt, it's just silly. I mean, but I think there's got to be a reason why they're pushing that narrative, right? I mean, maybe it's because they knew stuff would turn up in the sky and they would use it to their advantage, right? And tell us we're being attacked by aliens. Maybe it's to explain that kind of stuff. I'm not sure. Because, there's also the vanilla skies, right? Of
Hmm.
the 1800s
Yeah,
photos. Why is that? Were they blanking something out that they didn't want us to see?
yeah. See, I always thought it was they were blanking out bigger buildings, giant trees, and airships.
Mm,
But that's only a gut feel based upon everything that we know so far. But we've got no idea of we really what they were hiding. You'd have to
no,
get to the original, the actual negatives, and they were all plates, weren't they? Layer upon layer.
the
They've
last
got to
time.
be somewhere though.
You would hope maybe they're under the Vatican, right? Maybe
Yeah,
they
with
just
everything
the
else.
Vatican.
Talking of the Vatican, I mean, that's going around. That's going around at the moment. A few people have said, "Oh, the actor's decided he's had enough now that played the Pope," and I see similarities. I do
Yeah.
definitely. What's your gut on that? What do you think's going on there?
Wow. I mean, we had the video of the Pope disappearing come out a
Mm,
couple of years ago. Looked like he was a hologram. I think he's just a puppet, and there's this whole prophecy of the Pope where I think it's the Sistine Chapel. They've got pictures of all the popes, but there's a certain amount. Like they've got frames, and there's two left, right? So, and one is the Pope that we've got now. And the prophecy is when they choose the last Pope, you know, Christian prophecy will come true. It'll be, the apocalypse or something will happen, or it's the end of time. So, I think that they use a lot of these things to promote fear, right? And to promote
yeah.
agenda, and ultimately to
Mm,
make us create the conditions that they want, right? The reality that they want. That's why they spend so much time trying to get into our brains, right? With
mm.
education and music and social media and all this stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think, I don't have good things to say about the Catholic Church.
No.
Uh, so I think that it's probably likely that they're just using it to push a narrative, right? So when they get rid of him, they can say, "Oh, the end of the world is nigh. It's coming. It's
Yeah.
coming." You know. And again, really, just to get people, I guess, to give up and go, "Oh well, what can we do?" Just like they do all the time. Sit back, we'll do it for you, or it's useless. So give up.
That's it, isn't it? That is it. I was talking to someone the other day, a fellow called Jason Leosatos, who he was out there right at the start with David Icke campaigning, and he had a real hit job done on him by the BBC. And I said to
Yeah.
him, "What do you think's going on?" And he said that it's Stockholm Syndrome. Everybody wants somebody to tell them what to do. The people that are keeping us enslaved, we look to them for guidance. What should we do? Tell us what to do next. Tell us how to feel.
Mm.
We kind of almost want that, and we don't realize that we don't need any of it. But
No. Yeah.
it is a trap, isn't it? It's entirely a trap. And with the Pope, I've had people message me saying that's it, that he's the last Pope. There won't be another. And then other people say the next Pope will be black. They'll pick a black Pope. And I keep thinking you're focusing on this particular Pope. You ought to be looking at Pepe Orsini. It's the grey and black Pope that people want to be concerned about. The head of the Jesuits, and the Orsini bloodline is the one of the most powerful. And you Google it, go on Google Images and type in Pepe Orsini, you'll find two or three images, very very small, blurred, pixelated. He is well under the radar, and that's the man running the show at the Vatican. Don't worry about the one that we see on the front of the biscuit tin. It's the man that's pulling his strings.
Yeah, totally, man. I mean, that's why all the popes are like 80, man, and they
Mm,
don't seem that cognitive, do they? And they're not inspiring. They're just these old dudes who sit there and go,
mm,
mock a bit, right? And it's the same with everything, right? It's like, the politicians and presidents that we choose, they're just the ones on stage, right? They're not the ones
mm,
making shots. Same with all the actors and the musicians. They're all just, it's a stage, right? All the world is a
mm.
stage. Um, and they want to set the scene. They want to use us, our creative energy, to set the scene. And so that's what they do, right? They it's like you go to school, and if you've got a question and you put your hand up and ask a question, you'll get made to feel stupid,
Yeah.
right? If it's out of left field or something, unless it's what the teacher wants you to ask, you're dumb. And that puts in a fear from, when we're little kids of asking questions,
Mm,
being out of line, being different. And that just is the first, road to obeying authority. And that's what authority is, right? They're the authors of authority. The authors, they write
yeah.
this, right? And then we have experts, and people think, oh, you're only smart if you're an expert. And the whole school university system, this person's smart because they've got a degree, you know, which we know isn't true. Like having a degree doesn't make you intelligent or anything, just gives you more information that's probably not very well researched that you end up
Yeah.
repeating.
Yeah. And
And
that's all you're doing, isn't it? You're regurgitating what it's your ability with a lot of degrees, your ability to retain information and then recite it on demand.
yeah, they don't want the thinkers there,
No.
you know. And we've seen it, like in archaeology, people find things that are outside, the story,
Mm,
and they get told, "Oh, no, cover that up and don't talk about it." And if they do, they don't just lose their jobs; they basically get laughed out of the whole industry.
yeah.
And that obviously we've seen that with medical and have to toe the line, right? So you're not
Yeah.
learning to think; you're learning, like you say, just to regurgitate and proliferate their story, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Do you think
Yeah,
that, like, I watched Star Wars again the other day, the first three,
nice.
and I just kept seeing Tartaria, or how I envisage it to look. I kept seeing it throughout the whole trilogy. I kept seeing it all the time, and then I kept thinking about the Force. Use the Force, Luke, and all that. And I kept thinking, is that the ether? Is that is that early indoctrination? I mean, for me, as a kid when they first came out, is that early indoctrination for us? And then it's been morphed into Harry Potter for a newer generation. Same
Mhm.
story. Switch the lightsaber to a wand, and you've got the same story.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. They're all kind of the same, aren't they? I guess it's like the hero's journey kind
Mm,
of story. But yeah, Star Wars, yeah, when they show like the cities and stuff, like it's very high tech, right? And then some of it's very low tech, but
mm,
and then we have the fantasy side, and I think they're telling us in all of this, and who knows what the reason is, probably just to laugh at us, but they show us that there's tech, especially in Star Wars, right, where you get these kind of scapes of like people that are farmers, right? And they're living in the desert in a dome or
yeah,
whatever. They got robots and they got free energy and stuff. So it
yeah,
kind of shows that it's all there. And then the high tech, I think it's all based on stuff that they've found or they've heard about, right? That they destroyed or that they've probably still got for themselves, maybe. And then fantasy is the other side is like I say, the ether controlling the ether, like
mm,
through your own avatar, because I think this is what jewelry is essentially, things like crowns, with, where you have a gemstone sitting on your third eye there, and then the necklaces where there's one sitting on your heart chakra, and, they wear gold and silver, right? And I think that's tech, you
do
know?
you? Have you
Yeah.
heard the theory about the gemstones on the crowns being synthetic precious stones that made from the
You can
ashes
grow
of
them.
mm,
Made from what the ashes,
the
no?
ashes of people? Yeah, 'cause you know that you
Oh,
can send off
wow.
ashes and have a synthetic precious stone created. So Like
No,
what?
I did
Yeah,
not
well,
know.
our one of our dogs died a couple of months ago, and we were looking into it, and a few people had said, you can get it made, the ashes made into a stone. There's quite a few companies that will do that, the synthetic diamond or whatever you want. So we started looking into it. It's horrifically expensive, and of course, he belonged to four of us: me, my wife, and my two kids. We all, felt the same way about him. So we thought maybe we'll just all get, I don't know, sort of bracelets that with some sort of like capsule on them that can hold a few ashes kind of thing. So we decided to do that instead. But when I looked into it and I started doing some digging, a couple of people reached out because I'd mentioned it a few times. A couple of people reached out and they said, that the stones on these crowns are actually synthetic precious stones made from the ashes of people that they have conquered, killed, eliminated.
God, it's a bit dark, isn't it?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't know you could turn ashes into gemstones. That's
yeah, yeah. There's
interesting.
quite a few companies that do it, and I thought, well, you look at the crown jewels, the British royal family. What if they are made from people that they have conquered? Let's say, for example, Jesus existed and he was killed at the end of the millennial reign or the Tartarian Empire, and that is the most precious stone that exists.
Yeah, wow. That's an interesting theory. Yeah, I know that they can grow gemstones. That might be what they're doing. I don't know how they get the ash in there, but yeah, no, I had not considered that. I'd more considered that they were, facilitators to our energy body. And I think that would be, the Tartarian perspective when you're looking at, the rulers like the Allies.
Mm-hmm.
That would definitely be up their alley, right? They'd love stuff like that. So, I mean, talking about those and what we've got at the moment, then yeah, interesting theory. I mean, because they love their little, you know, trinkets, don't they? Their
Yeah,
jewelry, their little holy hand grenade and their scepters and, all these different things, obviously have a lot of meaning to them, right? There, because I'm sure it's not just tradition, it's because they mean something, right? Because they're powerful
yeah.
objects. What that is, we don't know, right?
A few people have said that the scepters, and I don't know the actual, I don't know what it's called, but the sort of staff that a lot of them have, the long sort of pole, if you
Like
like.
the book thing. Oh, that's a Pope.
Yeah, that they actually are to operate Antiquitech, that they actually
Mm,
operate the machine itself, that they fit perfectly in. You need these two objects, if you like, to be able to operate certain technology. I thought, well, that starts to line up, doesn't it? You see all of these members of royalty, and then people in the Vatican, popes, and so on, carrying the same objects. Maybe that is it. Maybe they are the keys you need to operate this stuff, to open a Starthought and get it working, or you know, I don't know.
well, it could be. I mean, we definitely see depictions like that from ancient Egypt, with a lot of
Mm,
the and that with different, the same stuff. I think even, the
mm,
pharaoh has like the crook, doesn't he?
yeah.
Which is what the Pope carry. Like he has a
Mm,
crook. Wow. Um, so yeah, it's interesting, the whole Ark of the Covenant in the pyramid kind of thing as well as the power source. Yeah, maybe they are. Maybe they've lost the power source. I'm not, or they just, yeah. They're. I mean, when you look at it from a word, from a spell's point of view, right? They're literally holding the power, right?
yeah.
I know.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
are.
And then again, the Chancellor, he was going around the world looking for like the Spear of Destiny and other, relics, right?
Mm,
Ancient kind of magical things, really, is what the story said. And so, yeah, that's interesting. Was he trying to sort of oppose there, maybe turn some stuff on? I don't know.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
there's an interesting story about that. Anyone watching? I haven't started it, but there's a series called Europa, The Last
Mm,
Battle,
mm.
which I thought is amazing, and I'm just going to get into it. So that tells the whole sort of different side of history, right, for the 20th century.
That's worth watching. I think you'll enjoy that. I think everybody should give that a go. Have you seen the documentary or docu-film, The Grey?
Yes, yes, the yeah, the one with just the words where she goes
Yeah,
through and the story I have. I think that's like 8 hours too or something, isn't it? That's,
yeah. It's too long. Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. Um, yeah, I mean, she sort of puts it out there as a book, as a fiction thing, but
Mm,
she gets a lot of interesting bits in there. And ultimately, I think that's what's happened. I was being invaded. We've
mm.
been invaded, like, and they took down the old world, and now they're still in control, and they're using that from just controlling our minds, right?
Who do you
Making us.
think they are?
Who do I think they are? I tend to think that we're dealing with um like a consciousness that's probably not, a human, I don't know, extra dimensional or something. I guess it goes along with stories, like the devil and that. There's some kind of evil, jealous consciousness that's got in here and is taking over people, right? Making deals with them first of all, buying them, and then the whole, sell your soul to the devil
Mm,
type. Because that's what we tend to see, right? It doesn't seem like it's, like an ethnicity or a certain people or that are doing the work at least. Now, when we get to who are the hierarchy of that, who are the actual ones carrying out the decisions and running the whole sort of business of it, I think that would definitely have to go down to, a certain group of people that we cannot mention, which is why most of the reason why I think it's them, because you cannot even say their name unless you want to get videos taken down and end up, getting done for hate speech.
right, right. So you're not talking about the bloodline families, or are you? Or
Mm,
indirectly?
well, yes and no, because they're all part of it. I guess I can say the word Zion, like
Hmm.
Zionist, which is who I think they are. You can trace them back to Khazaria, which is basically the Ukraine, which you can still see all the stuff going on there. I think it was all set up by the Bloodline families, and it goes back in Khazaria. It was this country, and no one would go through it because if you traveled through the country, and you're, of any significance, they would just murder you and steal your identity and go out into the world and like get credit on your name and just basically just get everything they could out. Like they'd pretend to be other people. This is how they sort of started getting money and everything. And then they ended up getting surrounded and the people, who were sort of trying to subdue them said, look, basically you have to pick a religion to be. And they went, oh, well, we're,
Hmm.
Israelites.
Mm.
So and that's where the Zionist movement came from. So they're not actually the the Israelites, the Hebrew people, but they've
Mm.
sort of taken over and claim to be, and that they're the ones masquerading as the word that cannot be said right today.
Well,
That
that marries
sort of
in with.
thinking, yeah.
Sorry, I was
No,
just
no.
thinking that aligns perfectly with the Rothschilds
Mm,
because they converted.
yep.
That is not their history. Their ancestry is not that religion. They converted, so that
Yep.
ties in.
So they all did, but they only false converted, right? They didn't
Mm,
actually. It was just for show.
mm,
And we can see what their actual beliefs are right through the media, right through the pop stuff,
yeah,
through all the stuff, all the ceremonies they have.
yeah,
They're telling us what they actually believe.
yeah.
Um,
I think that film Eyes Wide Shut was filmed at the Rothschilds' house, manor,
so
mansion,
yeah, I believe you're correct.
based upon
Uh,
one of their gatherings, isn't it?
yeah, and there's that famous photo from the 70s, the
Mm.
Rothschild party.
Oh, that's actually scary.
It's very weird. This is what these people get up to.
You wouldn't
Uh,
want to wake up in the middle of the night and have that picture hanging on your wall.
Wow.
It's an odd looking.
It is, I just thought, is that where that whole phrase, waking up with a horse's head in your bed comes from? Because you're literally wearing them, right? Take it off and leave in bed. Ah! But it's also strange. It's also provable, and they're still doing it. And now they're doing it in, concerts and in film clips.
Yeah.
That famous footage of the opening of the tunnel in where was it? Switzerland, I believe, where they had like, have you seen that? I
No, I
can't
haven't.
remember, but and yeah, the big parades, same kind of stuff, dressing up, with animal heads on and as ghouls and all this, and they're marching down the street, and on the side there's all these seats and all these people sitting there in like tuxedos, and that's really weird. Um, so this is you'll know them for their acts, right? For the way they are. Like people are what they do, not what they say.
Mm,
I think that's a good way to look at them because they tell us all this stuff and they're this and they're that, but what are they actually doing? You can't be someone who is God-fearing or even believes in God, he wants to do the right thing, who then goes and decides to put fluoride in all the water systems.
mm.
Right. And that's one of the least things they've done. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. So what do you think is going on then? Do you think that they've got an end game, or are
I,
we in it?
well, yeah, I kind of think we're in it. I think, um, with all the research, obviously, especially with orphan trains and your research, with Cabbage Patch Kids. It looks, and we've always kind of known this, right? It looks like that there's more than one kind of being down here.
Mm,
Uh, and I've always kind of said about, the Allies is that they're not us. But I believe a lot of them have been taken over, and that's why they're not us, sold their soul, or they got the
yeah.
real narrow eyeball or whatever it is. But I think their game is to control us and to have a slave species that looks after them. And I think that they know that this time is coming, that there's going to be earth changes and frequency changes that they can't stop. And so they're just trying to hold on to a population. And I think the way that they think they can do that is to keep the vibration low.
Yeah.
If we're talking about this change, and it seems to be is a frequency thing, then maybe if they can keep people in a low enough frequency, um, that those people will stay, right? When the earth change comes. I mean, do they know there's going to be a split? There's been talk about that there's going to be like sort of a split to a two earth type, a new earth, this kind of thing. Or is it just that they want their populations to control in 15-minute cities, and
Yeah.
and we'll just sort of be living outside there? Because I think they know that they can't control us, but that's also why I think there may be another clones, right? There may be a cloned population, each of these people with no internal monologue, the people that you can't talk to, they're complete systemites. They want authority. They
Hmm.
want someone to tell them what to do and when they're right and when they're wrong. And they're the people who, laugh at people who get pulled up by the police. Ha ha ha, ha, look, they're getting robbed on the highway. Woohoo. These kind of people that they're not like us, right? Like that there's a clear difference. And it's mainly in their thinking that they don't think. So are they trying to hold on to those people? Is that their creation? Because again, in the Bible, in the first, like literally in the first two pages of Genesis, there's two creation stories.
Hmm.
Right? There's God who creates man and woman from the dust of the earth. And then on the next page, this Lord, whoever the Lord is, the Lord God pops up. He makes Adam and then makes Eve from Adam's rib.
Hmm.
And as you go through the Bible, God becomes the Lord. And I think that's a big clue, right? I think that's their God. That's not the creator God. And so is that telling us that there was an original creation and then the Lord has come in and made a second creation? Is that the clones? Because the
Yeah.
whole story, right, in the rib is cloning, right? Getting
Oh,
DNA.
absolutely. Yeah, extracting the DNA. And the Lord, with regard to the Lord, then anyone looking into the Anunnaki is going to see Lord Enki mentioned quite a lot.
Yep. Yep. And in your fine country, there's a House of Lords.
Mm, yeah. Which years ago all wore those white wigs.
Rigs. They have the same
Are they the
judges,
bald? Yeah.
and it says don't take the Lord's name in vain, which I thought meant you shouldn't probably call yourself a Lord, but there's Lords everywhere, the House of Lords. So is this
Mm,
the same people, right? The Lords, and then, like I said, then you've got the judges who sit there in judgment. Again, in the Bible, it says, "Do not judge," right?
mm.
So, in their black cloaks, and what do? They treat us all as dead, right?
Yes, dead
Maritime
entities.
law. They're
Mm,
necromancers. That's why
mm.
they wear black capes. They are necromancers. They deal with the dead.
And then we're charged and placed in a cell.
We're charged, right? Which is all the energy. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, because they're the ones in power that we voted into power, right? Elected.
yeah. And that's it, isn't it? They've been put into power. They're controlling the power. They have the power of the people.
Yes, yes. And so I think what's happening at the moment is the energy is rising, but I think, we've been told about a pole shift. I think
Yes.
I think the pole shift is a magnetic pole shift just from
Yeah. Yeah.
negative to positive. I think we have, negative times and positive times like the sine wave.
Hmm.
Or cycles, whichever way you want to look at it. And so that's why we've been in a negatively charged environment. And so the people who are negatively charged are
Yeah.
naturally empowered. They're the
Yeah.
ones that naturally are in power and
Yeah.
powerful. And so when it flips to positive, which I think we're getting to, I think that's why we're seeing all this plasma and weird stuff going on.
Yeah.
Um, then the good people who are positive, they will be empowered. And I think this is how we get a golden age, right? How we get a new earth, new world is like that flips the power. Whoever's empowered and has the power will change and it will suddenly be the people who are doing it for the right reason, right?
Yeah. So, what do you think will happen when the polls change? What do you think we'll see?
Wow. They might be starting to change. Have you seen there's all these videos coming out saying there's no one in China.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we were talking about that the other day, weren't
Oh,
we?
oh, that's right.
With
Yes.
Kelly.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Really.
Yeah. And
And
I heard Richard Vobes talk about it yesterday. So it's getting out there. People are starting to notice.
yeah, yeah. So is this part of the process? Is this maybe that frequencies rising? And as that happens, we only see a certain frequency width, right? With
Yeah.
infrared to ultraviolet. So if we've only got a certain amount that we can see in frequency, if we raise in vibration and we move up, does that mean we stop seeing things at the bottom end? Is that maybe what's happening?
That's a
These
good
people,
point.
they have, they're clones, right? So they don't have souls like us, let's just say. And so their frequency is lower because they're controlled, right, by the system.
Mm,
So they're the ones that are affected by all this low energy, low vibration, fear stuff that's put out.
mm.
And so, yeah, they stay in that plane. And as we rise, do they disappear? Is that what we're saying? Because, the Mandela effect, man, people sort of talk about,
Mm,
and, oh, yeah, man. But that's massive. Like, that
yeah.
is literal proof that at least some of us remember a different past, right?
Yeah.
So what does that mean? Like, are we, and we're, a lot of us are finding answers in history, right? We seem
Mm,
to be more of an affiliation with that. Um, so it's almost like, again, back to that sort of clone things. Are we the original inhabitants with DNA links back to that world? And so we can sort of rise and do things or even wake up, right, to the spelling, right? The spells that have been cast on us, by these allies. Um, because we only see what we believe is true, right?
yeah.
Which is why when you go to school, they're like, this is a house, this is a train, this is
Mm,
they tell you everything, right? They don't let you go and
yeah.
discover for yourself. So if we only believe what we've been told and we're all fully indoctrinated, we went through school, we lived in this world, we all are, like, can we only see what they've told us is real? Like, is that the awakening that we're going to start thinking for ourselves, like we have been doing, with things like Tartaria,
Mm.
and all this evidence started to pop up when we started asking questions. Like, are we going to be able to, like, is Tartaria still there and running, but we can't see it because we've got
Oh, yeah. I love this. I love this train of thought. I,
Mm.
I see. I I keep wondering if Atlantis is still there. I mean, because if you look at what we know about Atlantis, it's all really come from Plato, and it's a
Yeah.
very old document, isn't it? So we don't know, do we? But I often wonder if it is still there. It's fully operational. We just can't see it. It's in an area we can't cover, or fly over or get to, and perhaps, as I call them, the parasites. Perhaps they're not allowed to either. Perhaps the deal is, you come anywhere near here, then you'll be zapped. We've
Mm.
got better technology than you, and you just leave us alone, and we'll keep ourselves to ourselves. But we're watching you. You overstep the mark, and we will intervene. I often wonder that because because if there is this huge continent called Atlantis out there, and my guess is for it to be called Atlantis, it must be connected to the Atlantic. Uh, um, Somebody would have found it by now. Someone, I mean, even the bloody parasites would have looked.
Oh,
There
yeah.
people
Oh,
out
they
there with Musk. I mean, why isn't Musk looking for it? Why are they? Why? What's the obsession with the moon and Mars and I think that Atlantis to a lot of people is just dismissed still as mythology.
Mm.
And is that on purpose? Is it a little bit like we've been pushed to constantly question what's going on in Antarctica when maybe we should be looking at what's going on in the Arctic Circle at the North Pole? I often wonder if it's all intentional, to just send us down the wrong road.
Yeah, well, if you've read The Smoky God,
Oh, the
he's,
Smoky God, yeah.
that's at the North Pole, right?
Mm,
Admiral Byrd said he went into a hollow, a hole,
yeah.
and the same kind of thing, met, advanced people that are really big. We have a lot of stories saying that, like Agatha, right? All these
Mm,
different stories. Atlantis, I mean, maybe it's underwater, maybe Aquaman was real, right? Because there's all these USO, like
yeah.
under what is unidentified
Mm,
submerged objects, things coming out of the
yeah.
ocean, or is it outside the ice wall? But because when I think about hidden continents, I tend to think I'm the same. I think in the Atlantic, probably, someone would have come across it, but in the Pacific, I think totally there could be something in the Pacific. In the stories, that sort of says more like Lemuria, as a
Yeah.
continent. Um, and when you look at flight paths and things, no one goes across the middle of the Pacific, like not
No.
nothing else, no ships, no anything. And it's half the world. Like that ocean is half the
Mm,
right. But then also outer space, right, past the ice wall. Elon Musk looking for Mars. What is Mars? Is it extra land?
mm,
When they talk about the moon and all this kind of stuff, is that extra land? Because there's a guy from Space Force, which Trump started,
hmm.
and he's talking. He literally says, "Imagine space is the ocean, and imagine the moon is a continent out in that ocean." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're probably not imagining much there, buddy." So. Because this is, I think, why are they putting all this money and all this effort into doing something? It's like you say, right? When they say look up, we should look down. Maybe they're trying to get
Mm,
us, to believe, yeah, oh, Mars is up in the sky, the moon's up there, blah, blah, blah.
mm.
But they're talking about continents sort of sideways. Maybe they're getting there in submarines, right? We know that the astronauts train in pools.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you mentioned earlier on, that woman who's in prison that still hasn't shown the public her client list, she
Yeah.
was a submarine pilot, wasn't she?
Submarine pilot, yeah. And there's like a submarine base that's like literally in the
Mm,
middle of the United States, and you get there through a big tunnel. And that's what we know about, right?
they
And the
love
more
their
we,
tunnels.
yeah, the more we go down, there's some more tunnels we find. So are there
Mm,
submarine tunnels? Is that how people are accessing different realms, through the ice wall? Can they get still through underneath? Because all these, parasites, our lights, we don't see them. We don't know who these people are. You never see them on the street. You never see them in the supermarket. Even if you go to Beverly Hills or, Paris or whatever and go in the most expensive, you're not going to run into Brad Pitt or bloody, you know, anyone like this, right? Like, so we don't know what these people do. We don't know if
Mm,
they're people, but are they living their lives on other lands and then just coming in, to do their little appearances, once or twice a year,
yeah,
little self-gratification ceremonies, where they sit around and pat each other on the back and tell each other how great,
yeah,
because
yeah.
we don't know. I watched They Live Again the other night.
Oh wow. Okay.
Been a
Yeah.
while. And it's the same thing, like in that they're all the elites, right? All the,
Mm,
the aliens, and then anyone who basically wants to join them can, and they get, you just got to toe the line, do what you're told, and they all get all the wealth and fame they want, kind of thing. And it's a very interesting story, and they do it all through frequency too, right?
mm,
By setting out that signal. And all they have to do is break that frequency, and everyone can see what's going on for their own eyes. So, yeah, what was the original question? What do I think is going to happen? I think that, I mean, we're going through it, right? There's going to be bigger events. I think, a lot of people are saying it's going to get worse before it gets better. And
yeah.
I do agree with that, but I don't think it's just going to be in certain areas. So if you're in the right area, then you'll be fine, kind of thing. Which is my plan. I'm not preparing. I'm just going to be at the right place at the right time so that I don't get knocked out. But yeah, I think that it's basically we're going to see the world transform and change, and their power is going to slip away, and they're going to get more and more exposed, as has been happening, right, for the last couple of years at
Yeah.
least. And so anyone who is able to see them will see them, and it'll get to the point where no one will give them any attention or money or whatever anymore, and that's the end of them, right? That's the end, right? Because they are only here because they're parasites,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They
Totally.
live off us. If we stop giving them our attention and worshiping them, in whatever capacity, right? As a judge or as a expert, you're still worshiping these people, putting them on a pedestal
Mm,
above you.
yeah.
And then, of course, we need to stop, giving them our sweat equity, right? Giving them money, taxes, fines,
Mm,
all this kind of stuff. Stop obeying their stupid laws. And as they get more exposed, more people are doing this because as they're getting more exposed, there's much more information coming out about don't pay your taxes and
yeah. The whole straw man thing.
straw man thing, the law,
Mm,
let's boycott companies. Budweiser from the USA did that one ad with that confused young boy, man, girl, if you know what I mean. And they lost $20 billion in like 3 months.
oh wow.
And they still haven't recovered, and they kind of can't. And I think this is gonna, I'm sure it's happening a lot more than we're told, because
Do you know what?
we all see the closed shops, right? They're just not telling us.
Yeah, I just suddenly had a flashback to Joe Rogan interviewing Post Malone, and he sat there with the. He says, "Is it all right if I have a drink?" And he's got a six-pack of Bud Light, and then he's singing about Budweiser. Every time you see him, he's got a can of Budweiser. I wonder
Really?
if, yeah, I wonder if that's connected to it. I'm
Yeah,
guessing that
recent?
yeah, yeah, right
Ah,
now. I'm guessing
maybe
that
they're trying
yeah,
to get into people's minds that will
help.
just trigger people. Because so many men that are awake that have learned stuff in the last 4 years that are sort of MAGA types. They're the ones that killed Budweiser. They just went nut, and but they all follow. Most of them follow Joe Rogan and think he's the man.
Yeah,
So him sitting there just drinking them and not selling and not saying anything, they're in their mind going, "Oh no, Bud's all right," and they'll probably find themselves buying Budweiser in a few weeks, right?
yeah, yeah. It's very clever, isn't it? The whole, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And,
It's
and
all
that's what they're good
subliminal.
at. They're good at psychology.
Mm,
they know our psychology. We just don't know theirs, right? And it's because theirs is so scary to us, right? They're so psychopathic. They're so
They are psychopathic. Yeah, they
com-
are.
completely. Um, and so maybe if we, yeah, could learn how they thought, but I mean, do we really want to? I think we just ignore them. They're pretty vile kind of creatures, whatever they are. But yeah, I think it's a cycle. That's what I'm betting on. Because we've got evidence that it was better in the past. There was free energy. There was
Mm.
amazing, the kind of stuff that was made only when you're in your creative state, your imaginative state, and when you've got time, right? That's what we see. So I think that's where we're going. We're going back there.
Do you think we'll see some cataclysmic events?
Um, as in like floods and all this kind of like
Mm.
worldwide flood. I don't think we're going to see a worldwide flood. I think we're going to see a lot of localized events,
Mm.
which we've been seeing, right? Which can, fully destroy areas, but they're only affecting, sort of small areas. I think we're going to see more of that. And then how natural is that? There's all this talk about weather modification. Are they causing this or are they just releasing information about weather modification so we believe they're causing it because they're trying to hide what's actually happening? Which in the end, this is why they brought out like global warming, right? Back in the 80s. This is
Yeah.
this is when they started getting ready for it. This is how far away they think. And then climate change. So they've got, half the population convinced that climate change is happening and it's our fault. It's happening
Yeah.
because we, drive cars and cows fart. We've destroyed the world. And so that's another explanation for normal people to point to, right? When they see all this stuff happening, whether it's natural or, created, they're like, oh, it's weather change. See? And then
Mm.
it's my fault. It's my fault. I let that cow live instead of killing it before it farted. And then I drove my car.
I saw a
It's
brilliant meme with that. It was Bill Gates had said that cows farting was actually causing more damage than emissions from cars, and someone had a meme that they'd created of him. And they said to him, "You've got a couple of options here. You can go in this garage. We're going to lock the doors and seal, make it airtight. This is the one you're going in with. It's a car with the engine running, and I'm going to go in the one with the cow farting, and we'll see who lives the longest." And it is.
yeah.
I think that was a big drive to get us off eating meat.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, look at the push against farmers. You know,
Mm.
you've seen that we haven't seen it so much here in Australia, but obviously in
Oh,
the
it's terrible
UK.
here. Yeah, the
Yeah.
farm literally up the road from me has a big sign protesting about it. But you know what? I've said this to so many people. You can petition, you can protest, you can march. They don't care. That isn't going to change anything. The only way you can stop is if you say to them, I'm no longer participating. I no longer even accept or recognize you as an entity. I'm not paying tax. I'm not replying to any of your shit that you post through my letterbox. You're done. It's
Mm,
over. Now, if they all did that,
definitely.
job done.
Yes. Totally. Totally. And I think that's why they're getting exposed. So that I think that's what we're moving towards. But this is the thing. The system is fairly all encompassing, right? And we're at a
Mm,
point where we're all reliant on it.
we
Like,
are.
that doesn't mean we have to be, but most of us are at least in some respect, right? Whether it to be to get petrol for your car or
Hmm.
to get extra supplies from shops and that, right? That's still ultimately part of the system at the moment. And so people want to jump out of the system, right? They want to try things. They want to live on the land. They want to not pay their
Yeah.
taxes, but then they always revert back to, oh, if I don't pay my taxes, oh, well, what if they find me and then I'm worse off next time, and I have less money, then I'll lose my house.
Yeah.
It all goes back to the system,
Yeah.
right?
It's all the fear.
We're so educated and programmed that without the system, it's bad. But I mean, when you actually
Yeah.
see what's going on, you see that the system is the trap, and outside it is free because you can still interact with the system. You know, if you act
Dip in and out.
as a living human being, yeah, you can interact with it, but not as a dead entity straw man, right?
Mm,
You can still go to someone who's growing veggies and, buy them or trade for them, whatever. But we've all got to start definitely stepping out. And I think the biggest things are things like stop paying taxes, stop paying fines, all this kind of crap, with shopping, try and shop at shops that aren't multinationals, right? Like
yeah.
go to the local shop if you can, support your local farmers, even if it costs a bit more in the moment, in the long term, it's a lot cheaper, like
And there's
this
more
cheap.
nutrition, isn't there? Like if you go to a farm shop here and get a locally sourced steak and some potatoes that were actually dug out of the ground up the road, and the nutritional value from those is far higher. So it might
Oh,
cost a little bit more, but you're not going to be hungry again in 5 minutes. That will
yeah,
last you 24 hours. And that's what people don't get, that they think, well, it's better value for money if I go and buy some cheaper produce from the supermarket. You're going to eat more to get the same nutrition. You're going to have to consume a lot more. It's a false economy.
mm, yeah, yeah. And also, pay now or pay later, right? Pay now for good food or
Yeah,
with your health. This is the thing. And this ultimately comes from, they've devalued us so much. They've attacked our self-esteem so much that people don't value themselves enough to
no.
say the food I eat is important. I need to fuel myself properly, like because I'm
Mm.
important. It's like, oh no, well, the bills are more important, or paying the government, right? Taxes are more important, school
Mm.
fees are more important. Buying this new car so that people think I'm better than I think I am myself. You know?
Yeah, yeah, you're
It's like,
right. I mean, that's a trap. Consumerism is a massive trap. You reminded me
yeah.
a moment ago about something. I was talking to someone the other day, and they said to me, "I won't use Amazon," and I know your book's on Amazon, and I understand that you had no option than to use Amazon to get it out there, but I'd rather buy one directly from you because I won't support them. And I said, well, I understand that totally, and I totally agree with you, but I started using Amazon to get printer cartridges. And they said to me, well, I always try and get my printer cartridges local from a little local independent shop, and I'll just buy a few at a time. And I said, I understand that, and I would do that too if I didn't live in the middle of nowhere. But my first question to you is, what make of printer have you got? He said, Hewlett Packard. I said, so you're supporting, or you want to support local businesses, but your printer is made by the largest manufacturer of printers in the world. Can you see the irony there? And they said, no, I don't know what you mean. I said, well, it's a little bit like, I suppose, tweeting about child labor from a phone that was made by a child in a sweatshop in China. There is a certain amount of hypocrisy or certainly irony going on there, and we can't avoid it. We can't escape it. You can say, I don't want to participate. I shop local. I won't support the big brands. I won't buy anything online. You do. Because you can't not, and then look at the clothes you're wearing, like the car you're driving. We're all surrounded by it. I mean, even if you don't buy an Apple or a Samsung or whatever, you're going to end up still having a branded phone of some description. We're all
Yeah,
supporting the big tech and
yeah, but this is the thing. If we want to use the stuff in it, we kind of have to. And I just think that, everything matters, but nothing matters. Like you do
mm,
your best, right? Like it's no use to like pack up, sell your car, sell your stuff, go and hunt animals and get their skins to make a backpack out of and put this stuff in there and walk into the bush. That's not going to help anyone, right? And you're probably not going to have a very good time. So we're here. We are where we are, but it's getting better. I think as long as we're moving forward, that's the main thing. And some people are going to take bigger steps than others. But the more as that happens more and more, and there's more evidence that you can do this, then more people will start doing it, right?
mm,
Like I see this like through the law, like when people start not paying their fines, and they work out how to talk to the legal system so they don't get repercussions. Everyone's like, "What did you do? Let me know. Let me
Yeah.
know." When that they're all in, right? When they have proof that it might work, or is working. Um, so yeah, I mean, as far as consuming, I'd say when it comes to food, definitely buy local, right? But I mean, when it comes to possessions, right? And that's possessions possess.
Mm.
Uh, first of all, stop and think, do you need it? But if there's stuff you need, well, just try and get it sourced the best you can, really. And if that's Amazon, then that's Amazon. I've lived out in the middle of nowhere before, and I got stuff that I really needed from Amazon and other online, people. So, but ultimately, it's the intention that we're moving away from that, and I think that's all that matters. And everything comes from China anyway these days, right? So even if
It
you
does
go
at
to
the
the corner,
moment.
to the corner shop to buy a printer cartridge, I mean that shop I guess might get some money, but it's still probably made by children in a factory somewhere, right?
Yeah, yeah, like most of the clothes we're wearing and everything else, it all,
Yeah,
yeah,
and made for, like literally a tenth of the price that we pay for it. So all these, it's all coming out of China at the moment. That's all a scam too, right? Essentially,
yeah,
it all is really.
yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah, you said something earlier on that I thought about and I think about quite a bit. You said that a lot of people don't have that inner chatter, that inner sort of
Monologue, internal.
monologue. Yeah, the internal monologue. Yeah, that's it. A lot of people don't have that, and I often wonder if they are the people that descend from cloning, and that the people that do have that internal monologue have memories of what happened before in our DNA,
uh,
and that's why things don't make sense to us. Why a lot of things we question, and so many people don't, and I don't think we're going to be able to wake them all up. And I often wonder if the people that are what we class as awake are they the people that stared out of the window at school and couldn't
yeah,
pay attention? It just didn't work for them.
mm,
I'm
yeah,
guessing you stared out the window at school.
yeah, man, yeah. I was, I was, I was a guy at every report. Like Campbell could do so much better if he just
Mm,
applied himself. Um, so yeah, yeah, yeah. I had like school was just crap. Like because I could see the point of education of learning stuff because I like to learn stuff, right? And even from a young age, when I got into high school, all I wanted to do was ancient history because I'd done history, right, which is basically the 20th century, the wars. I'd done it like three times.
mm.
I just wanted to do ancient history, and I finally got into this class, and I was so excited. And then like the year started, and they're like, "Oh, not enough people in that class, so I'm not running it." So
Oh, what?
I never got to. I always wanted to learn, but I never got taught the stuff I was interested in. I think that's what it is. That's why we stare out the window because it just doesn't make sense. Like we know that, it's all this stuff, especially when you get into dumb maths, like unless you're going to be an engineer or whatever, you don't need much more than maths. And then on top of that, the maths they teach us is wrong. They teach us accounting maths. That's all they teach us is enough maths so that we can pay our taxes.
Yeah,
Like they don't teach us any of the, Fibonacci spirals or sacred
yeah,
geometry, or anything like that that could be useful. And so, yeah, I think you're on it. I think there's definitely two different types of people down here that seem to operate differently. Some can see and some can't. And it makes sense that cloned people, you know, that didn't come from the creator, let's say, wouldn't have the soul or necessarily the internal dialogue.
mm,
That's why they follow rules so easily. That's why when you try and talk to them, they just go quiet and then they talk to you like nothing, like you've said nothing, because they
yeah,
can't comprehend it. There's nothing going on in there, right? So yeah, I
yeah,
agree. I think we're the originals and we're going to link back to Tartaria, and I think that that's why we see Mandela Effect because we remember
mm,
even past, and that's why we're into asking questions. And I think ultimately, the others will start falling away if they can't raise to the right vibration that the planet or that the Earth is going into. I think they're just going to stay in the lower realms. But I mean, I don't think they're going to know about it either because I don't know that they're sentient or conscious like us.
Yeah.
They don't seem to be.
Do
So,
you find you've got like friends and family that you just can't talk to about any of this?
not anymore. Because I mean, I'm lucky because my parents are, you know, well, especially mum's sort of semi-awake.
Mm,
Yeah, she was onto the food sort of stuff and the fluoride back in the 80s and 90s. I mean, I make an effort with my family, obviously.
mm,
But seriously, the other people, I just don't talk to them because I just don't have the time. I'm just so not interested. And you can't anyway. You can't have a conversation with those types of people. You know, it's like
mm.
my brother-in-law, we used to just fight all the time because he was such a normie. And so I just ended up just trying to avoid him basically. But apparently recently he said, oh, maybe Campbell was right because he got the thing in the arm
Remote.
and all
Mm,
that. And they've sort of all had a few health issues. And he's like,
mm.
oh, but yeah, no, I would say for anyone out there who's got people like that around, find you friends. Like, it's no good, right? You become like the people that you associate with.
Yeah.
They're literally going to pull you down, right? Pull your energy down, suck it out of you. They're going to steal your dreams, right? And whatever that dream is, of change, doing something better, of having a good conversation about a theory, they just destroy that stuff. So you can't spend time with these types of people, in my
I had a
opinion.
I had a friend of mine who when in 2020 I started putting things on Facebook about what was going on and what I thought was going on, and trying to encourage people not to do anything and to just sit back and watch what happens and don't go rushing up the doctors just yet. Let's just play this out. And a friend of mine, he started arguing with me, a really good friend of mine, usher at my wedding. He started arguing with me online on my page. He started arguing and saying that he didn't agree with a lot of things I was saying. And then every time he went down to the doctors, he would post to say he'd got his latest medical intervention and how proud he was to be taking part in this and doing his bit. And then after about 12 months, so this would have been sort of March, April time 2021, he put a post up saying he'd been diagnosed with cancer and it was terminal. And I messaged him and I said, I know that we haven't seen eye to eye recently, but please, will you try a few things for me? First of all, I'd like you to go and have a very good look at your diet and what you're consuming. I want you to drop fast food, anything processed. Ideally, try going vegan, proper vegan, and see if that makes any difference. And look into the benefits of watermelon. There's some real strong links with watermelon. Then there are other things that you can take, other supplements, and you could even consider an ayahuasca ceremony and see if you can flush your toxins out. He said, "Nah, no, I don't know. I'm not going to do any of that." He said, I don't want to go vegan. I don't like watermelon, and I've never heard of the other stuff." And I said, "Okay, would you consider trying CBD oil, getting a really pure CBD oil, and seeing if that would work, get your cannabinoid receptor working, then that will help with your immune system." Well, I'll think about it. That was it. And now all he does is post to check in when he has chemo. That's the post that I see now, and that they can't do
Right.
much more for him. Lost about five friends. The five friends died, and my cousin within 18 months of each other. All of them were fine. They were absolutely fine, and then found a
Until
problem and died within a few months of that problem. Um, and I kept saying the same old stuff. And I'm not saying that I know anything. I was just suggesting that they tried
mm,
thinking outside the box and try a few alternative therapies and perhaps not taking too much notice of their GP and looking into things a bit uh, from a different angle. And they all
mm.
refused to do that. And all but one of them are dead.
That's crazy, isn't it? I mean, and
Mm,
this is kind of the question, like, like what kind of a consciousness do you have to be to not, at that point?
mm.
And I think they probably all had families, right? So they
Yeah,
had,
yeah, all of
like
them.
reason to live. And they just, and I've seen it before too, like they just give up. They just, oh, the doctor said I'm dying, so I'm dying. I'm
Mm,
sorry. And this is the other thing is, people, all over the place have got tumors and stuff in them and all these other bits, and they walk around fine. It's just when they see a doctor and the doctor's like, oh, it's terminal, you'll be dead in 6 months, they start going downhill, man. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
wow, because they believe it. But I mean, I don't know, are these the clone people, the NPCs?
Mm.
Are they there? Is that happening because, that they don't know any different? They can only follow authority, or is that happening for us, right? To show us that your decision was right. Do not do this. This is the result.
Yeah, I often wonder if it was a test. So a lot of people say, yeah, it was a test to see how much control they could apply to us, and would we conform or not? What would it take to break or buckle us? And it's a mass exercise in seeing how much control they have over the general public. But I wonder if it wasn't that at all, that actually it was a test to see who knows what's going on or is suspicious, who is awake and who is asleep, essentially, is what I'm saying. Did they want to separate those people and have two databases, if you like? These people didn't comply. So they're ones that we can take with us. They're ones that will accept what's going to happen next. They won't be scared. They're kind of expecting it. And these people, we can't, they'll never accept or understand what's going on. Could
Mm.
it have been that?
It could definitely have been that, right? It's interesting in the sort of 10, 15 years before that all happened, that they set up social media, right?
Mm,
The places, where people literally will give you all this information because they're just chatting over it.
mm.
So here, all the protocols were in place, right, to do that. Yeah, I definitely think it's got to do with that there's different, whatever, right, different people down here, and there's one that they can control, and there's one that they can't. And they're trying to, get through this reset with their slave population,
Yeah.
basically. I think what it is, or either that or just to create as much bloody havoc as they can, because that's what they are, right? Before they go down, maybe they know, because it looks like they're trying to escape, they're trying to get through the dome, or they're trying to get out through the wall. I mean, who knows? I don't think they're trying to go through the dome with Katy Perry and Elon in their pockets. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm just watching the show. I think we're in the montage. There's a lot going on. We're coming up to the finale of the movie, and um, yeah, I think we've just got to. I think the main thing is that we create reality. We're the witnesses, right? We view reality and we create our experience with what we believe.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to it, that's it. Believe in yourself and believe your perspective. And it doesn't matter if anyone else, doesn't agree with you because it's your perspective. It only applies to you, right? Like this is the thing. And as long as we have that, then we're all right and we can all create something better. And I think that's the only way to actually get somewhere better, right? Is to create it.
Yeah, I agree. But have you got a gut feel for how long it's going to be until this is all over?
Um,
When will be the other side of all this?
I think it's shorter rather than longer. I know a lot
Mm,
of people sort of say even out to like 2040, 2043, right? That's why I don't see how we could keep getting crazy for another,
no, no.
15, 18 years. There's a lot I think we're going to see a lot this year. I think this year is going to pack a lot in, and I think by next year we're going to start to see a lot of change. That's what I think.
Positive or negative?
Positive. Yeah, I
Mm,
think I think I think when the flip happens, the pole change, the frequency change, I think obviously that's going to be instant, right?
Mm,
It's going to be a different frequency. And once that happens, then, the lower frequencies that don't, interact with that very well will just start falling away or they won't even be able to exist anymore. I think there's going to be a lot of chaos going up to it, but I think the actual point is just going to be, you know.
how do you think that will affect the people that haven't woken up when the frequency changes? Do you think that they will suddenly switch on and something will happen, or do you think they just won't notice anything's changed?
Um, I mean, I think at this point I'm sort of going with the NPC kind of theory that,
Yeah.
if they couldn't wake up by now, if they can't see anything by now, then clearly they're not, totally cognitive, right? They're not really there. So I think that they're either background people, just either there in reality or some kind of hologram just to make us separated, basically,
Mm,
so that
yeah.
you don't live next door to another conspiracy theorist. Um, or they're a population that's completely controlled. And so I don't think like that they're going to have a bad or good experience because I don't think they're really human. And yeah, that sounds a bit a bit rude, but I mean, I think that's where we are. Like, there seems to be a lot less people in this realm than we're told, and then a lot less that are actually, you know, man and woman like we are, right?
Yeah. So they're kind of like all extras
Yeah, just
on a
actually,
movie set.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's literally. And I think it's the best way to look at it too, right? Everyone who's on the center stage, they're just an actor too, right?
Oh,
They,
yeah.
they just got the lead role, right? They're under the spotlight, but everyone else is just the background people, yeah, the extras. And
What do you think about Trump with regard to the world stage? Do you think he's an actor too? Because so
oh,
many
for sure.
people reckon that he is the answer to everyone's problems, and he's going to usher in this new dawn of a better living, equality, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, no, I think he's definitely controlled. I think everyone on the stage is controlled. I think presidents and prime ministers are selected, not elected.
mm,
He's been over and put the hat on and kissed the wall and all that kind of stuff. His
yeah,
cabinet is full of banker types, shall we say that, Israelites. And he's definitely, he said a lot of good stuff, and I hope he does some of it. I hope he is that, but I'm never going to put my faith in someone, to change the world for me. And I think
mm,
that's the big problem, and that's what we need to get over. The big problem isn't that we have leaders, it's that we have so many followers who are willing to follow these
yeah,
people. And it's like you
yeah,
were saying about before, people are too scared to make their own decisions and step out on their own. So they put all their faith and trust into a leader. And that just by default makes them a follower, which puts them in a place of powerlessness, right? Because then all they get is what the leader does. Like that,
mm,
they have no choice. And so it's a dangerous, place to be to put all your faith in someone like that. Because I mean, we've seen it for our whole lives, right?
mm,
Politicians.
mm,
Obviously, he says think different things in a bit, and I hope he is. I hope that this positive charge and change will, maybe affect him or at least replace him with someone who's going to do it. But so I'm not judging that he's, the savior or that he's the anti, Christ. I think he's an actor, and whatever he's doing is not really his call at the moment. But the biggest problem is following. That's the
yeah,
biggest problem. Expecting someone else to fix your problems for you, right? When all we really need to do is ignore his people like him, the whole
mm.
government, right? So we'll see. There's, I still hope. I still have hope.
A new hope.
A new hope,
What,
yeah.
what do you think? What do you think Musk is doing there? What is? Do you think? How did he
Uh,
suddenly find himself in the White House?
uh, I mean, it's just got to be part of the script. It's just getting so weird and ridiculous that we've suddenly got all these billionaires there. We've got this Musk guy who was bald when he was 18 and now he's got a full head of hair. He looks like a different person, could be, comes from a bloodline. We know that, didn't create PayPal, basically walked in and took over the company and then sold it. And that's apparently how he started his money. Became the richest man in the world by what, starting Tesla? That doesn't make more money than Ford or Toyota.
Mm.
Apparently, he makes a lot of money off X, but that's basically all from the government, right? That's everyone's
Yeah,
tax,
yeah.
So
Hasn't he
he's
sold
got
X, or is he selling it? Or
no, not that I've heard of.
I thought
Is this the Twitter X or the Space X or his son X?
Twitter.
Lots of X's.
Yeah,
He's a
just be
cross
another
man.
kid, another one of his kids that don't talk to him, wouldn't it?
Yeah, yeah. X marks the spot. Like this is there's something going on with him, but he was in the first Iron Man movie,
Yeah.
uh, and now he's literally like taking on that role, right? He's
Mm,
the billionaire who's come to save the day.
mm.
It's such a script. I mean, I don't even know if these people are the originals anymore or whatever. So I just find that every time you spend time in trying to work, these people out, at least for me, I'm always wrong. So I just don't do it anymore. I just go, what do I live on today? Hmm. Um, it's just such a show, right? It's literally we're watching Idiocracy, man.
Mm.
It's crazy.
You got behind you a really lovely image of a staff fort. And I was saying
I
to you
do.
earlier on that I was chatting the other day, and we were saying that is it possible that they are hubs, that they are hubs that were used for the underground vacuum trains, and that they're all connected. Each star fort is connected, and that is how they get about, possibly still travel about now. Because Musk is on about putting a tunnel, isn't he? Connecting a tunnel under the Atlantic.
Is he really?
Yeah, yeah, joining America to England. Yeah, with
Yeah,
where
true.
you can travel between the two in seconds. At some incredible speed.
More like they're going to open up one of the old
Open an
tunnels
old one.
to
Yeah.
us. I mean, I think the whole old world was connected. I think it's basically like a macro chip. We have
Mm,
microchip. I think that it's just a macro version. And I believe that the buildings, at least the big ones we have left, they're all machines. They're not, buildings. They're not made for people to inhabit their energy machines of some kind.
yeah.
I think some of the star forts, you can see everything's connected. There's lots of circuits. We've got train lines, which are metal, which connect them all up as well. Is that how they move the charge along?
Yeah.
I think we're definitely looking at a whole interconnected system. And if they were building that kind of stuff, why wouldn't they have tunnels? There's tunnels everywhere. You know, have airships, have, trains under the ground, have, boats. I think that's what it all is. It's all free energy, right? Made for us so that we can explore the realm quickly. Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah, wouldn't it? Do you think they were all built by the same people?
The Star Forts,
Mm,
the same like culture, you mean?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, totally. It's just too much similarity.
Yeah, I agree.
The story is it all started in Europe, Italy. What was it, 1570s or something? And they went around for 200 years and built all these star forts, and then you find all these star forts in America
Yeah.
built
Yeah.
in after that, after the star forts have
Mm,
been finished in Europe. They all start in like the 1800s, 1820s,
yeah.
built by the military, and they just look exactly the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, no, I think it's all been found. Nothing was founded, it was all found. They all went out and grabbed their Freemasonry.
So what do you think that their capability is? Do you think that they were just hubs, or do you think that they were actually doing something else? Do you think that obviously I think it's fair to say they were harnessing energy, but do you
Yeah,
think that they were doing something more than that? Do you think people were living within those star forts?
I don't. Um, I think that they might have been used, for, you know, retreat type stuff to, if, to get in good energy for. Um, but I think that they are mainly probably energy devices. I think they obviously have a lot to do with water. I think
Yeah.
that's to do with
Always
the,
near water, aren't they?
but yeah, I think there's something else going on with the water. A lot of it's seawater, so I don't know
Mm.
if they were filtering it somehow, but all the angles makes me think of oh gosh, I know I've lost his mind. The Swedish water guy, Victor. I'll remember it in a minute, but he basically studied water and vortexes, and
Yeah.
he found that if you just created vortexes in these dead polluted rivers, that they just come back to life. So
Oh, really?
he'd go in and place rocks and stuff in them, and so the water would hit them and it would make little vortexes. And that like he was fixing all these rivers and he was making rivers so that they would float logs for the logging companies because the logs were sinking, and he'd go and do his stuff and they'd all float.
Oh, wow.
Victor
So,
Schauberger, that's his name.
right. So he's worth
Yeah,
looking into.
yeah, he's interesting. He's done a lot with water, and just when I look at all the angles in the stars, right, like the one behind me,
Mm.
if it's flying around, it's going to be creating a lot of little, vortexes, right? So
Yeah.
I think they were structuring water. I think they were all connected up in a grid. They were probably powering a lot of the transport, whether that be boats, airships, maybe underground trains too, right?
Mm.
And above ground trains, I think they were being powered by them as well.
I think for them to have built such a perfect structure, they align, don't they, to constellations as well. They must have been able to view from above while they were doing it, which brings airships back into it, doesn't it? They must have been able to see from above. And I think these airships were traveling all across the world and sharing blueprints, and perhaps the architect of that one behind you is sent over to assist with the construction of another one on the other side of the world. It's some
Mm.
sort of like world joint effort to connect everything and everyone together. It's got to
Yeah,
have been done by air.
yeah, I agree. I mean, we get a lot of pictures, drawings, and things from pre-aeroplane, and that they're always taken from this vantage point in the sky.
Yeah, yeah, they
What's
are.
that? But yeah, the Starfall site, this is why they've sort of, well, one of the reasons they've come into the consciousness is you can't see them from the ground.
Yeah,
As soon as Google Earth turned up, everyone's like, oh my God, what are all these things,
yeah, yeah.
right? You could see them. So yeah, I think, and also maps, right? Like we get these really intricate maps of the whole
Mm,
world, every little town on every little bit around the coast. I mean, do we think that they were going around in wooden ships with sails, having to fight the weather,
yeah.
tides and that, and then with their little sextant making these perfect drawings? Or maybe they were flying around and they had, some kind of technology, photography or whatever that they could get images from,
Mm,
and then they
yeah.
worked on those. I mean, it would make more sense, I think, than and when they talk about ships, in all the past, right, that's all ships. Are they talking about airships or water ships?
Yes, yes, it's very true. Yeah, we don't
Because
know,
it's
do we?
interesting, isn't it? Like we have train, right? A train is just a train. A
Mm,
car is just a car. But a ship is a ship or a boat.
mm,
Why has it got two names?
yeah, yeah. And why would a spaceship be called a spaceship?
Yeah, a spaceship, right? Ships
Yeah,
are,
I mean, we don't call an aeroplane a flying ship.
no,
So where
no,
has
exactly.
spaceship come from?
Yeah, because it's up in the air, right? Just like the airship, but they try and tell us that it goes to space. And then, UFOs, all the old ones that used to look like cigars.
Yeah,
It sounds like an airship.
does sound like an airship. And I guess in the wrong hands, if you had a direct energy weapon, you could go around in those causing fires, floods, what appear to be comets coming from the sky. You could,
Yes.
yeah, you could cause an awful lot of devastation, couldn't you?
Yeah, totally. And with all like bashies and different weapons that it looks like they had, like energy weapons,
Vajra is one
and
that's
that's the other
fascinates me.
one.
It's a
Yeah,
lightsaber.
Yeah, well, kind of, yeah. It's like the handle.
That's how I envision it, fully
You just hold it out.
operational in
Yeah,
my
right.
mind. That
Yeah, yeah.
this laser comes out of it, or this beam comes out of it, and I just
Cool.
see that with the lightsaber. I just see a Vajra of some description. Old Musk has got one on his bedside table. There's
Oscar's got
something
one.
there. I spoke to someone who used to go. I used to do it as well. I used to go urban exploring, where you'd go urbexing, we call it. Do you know what I'm on about?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Going
Yeah, I
around.
didn't know if it was a thing over there,
Yeah.
but we used to find like old manor houses, asylums, things like that, and get in and have a wander around, see what we could find, and wouldn't take anything. We would just take photographs and sort of go through people's stuff, post and books, and you'd open a wardrobe up, and sometimes, a couple of times actually, I found a wedding dress in there, and it must have been over 100 years old, and whalebone corsets still in their packaging, and all sorts of stuff. And someone got into an old mansion somewhere in Wales, and there was a safe, and the safe wasn't locked. And they opened it up, and there were a load of documents in there and a Vajra.
Really? With a
Yeah, and
treasure?
they left it there because if you're a proper urbexer and you're following the sort of unofficial code, then you leave it as you found it. And if you take an item from somewhere, you're supposed to leave one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Geez,
so
I'd be pocketing that and leaving my lighter.
yeah, exactly. Well, why not?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think anything.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
But I just thought there's why would you have one of those in a safe?
In an old world house.
I mean, have it on
Like,
display, if it's that
yeah, yeah,
important,
well, that's the thing
but
that
to
they
lock it
sort of
away,
they link it to Islam, right? So if
yeah,
it's out in India, then it's like, what are you even doing with it? Unless it's something that wasn't just in India, right? Like maybe it is a power source of some kind that people were using
yeah. Well, in
at a
Hindu mythology, it's called the thunderbolt.
yeah, yeah, like all the wars in the sky and stuff they had,
Yeah.
and they used to use them to shoot each other, didn't they?
Mm,
And then we have that kind of stuff coming through into the Greek gods as well, right? With Thor and all this kind of stuff, shooting lightning bolts from the sky. I mean, they definitely, yeah, there was a lot of tech around, and I mean, whose tech was that? I guess was it ours or was it theirs?
that was my next question. Actually, I was going to ask you when we when we talk about Tartarian technology, and Tesla normally pops up at some point, or we start sort of using the word antiquitech. Are we talking about Atlantean technology that was passed on, or Atlantean technology that was found and made operational again? Where did this Tartarian technology stem from in your mind?
Um, it's a good question.
No
I mean,
pressure, lots of pressure.
I guess if we say that it came from Atlantis, then then the next question is, well, who did they get it from?
Yeah.
You know, so was it originally developed by someone, or was it just, because a lot of these buildings, we say, how were they built? How did they do this? Like the bricks, like I, trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of bricks,
Mm,
all laid perfectly in mortar beds. How? How? Like, how was that even possible? So, what are these buildings? Were they built by hand or were they created by thought form? Were they
mm,
literally thought into being and all these different things? If we're in a place where we can use our whole brain and we don't have all this crap, and spelling and programming in us, who knows what we can create, right?
mm,
Like all the ancient sort of texts that we seem to find, they all seem to kind of say, oh, it's all within us, right? The creation's within us, and it's all about getting focused and
yeah.
getting
The
silent.
blueprints are in our DNA, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe all this stuff was dreamt up. Maybe that this whole place is a dream, right? That was dreamt up and
Yeah.
put, because I don't think we came from, frogs and fish and
No.
monkeys and all kind of weirdness. So, that's a good question is how did it all start? How did we get to that high civilization? Was it an actual evolution thing? Like, did we just start here, Adam and Eve and no clothes and nothing else, and we just slowly over time work stuff out? Or were the first people fully, they had their society, their tech, everything set up? Was that the creation?
Yeah. I think
Because I
people
mean,
underestimate what our mind can do, and and we all use it. We all have examples of telepathy going on at some point where you've been talking about someone and they suddenly appear, or you go to ring someone and they ring you first and you haven't spoken to them in a long time. We're doing it, we're using it. It still works. We've just got to decalcify, I guess, our pineal gland and practice. And it's a muscle, really, isn't it? It needs working. Our minds, the brain needs to be exercised.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then who knows what we're capable of? But we've all
Yeah,
got, to an extent, a certain element of telepathy that we use all the time without knowing.
totally. Yeah, I totally agree. I think the biggest thing is we've just been told we don't. And so then we believe
Mm,
we, it's like the first thing they tell you when you go to school is to leave your imaginary friend at the door, right?
yeah,
None of
yeah.
that stuff in here, sorry. We're realistic. Let's get real. Let's be realistic. Like
Mm,
create the outer world that we want you to see. But
yeah.
all those gifts are still there. But I think it's because we don't believe it. But everyone in their lifetime has these, incidences where they're like, oh, what was that?
Yeah.
Especially mothers and babies, they have it heaps. Mothers and their children, the whole telepathy thing. Mothers
Mm,
know kids are in trouble, so it's definitely there. It's just the spelling that's the problem. We've just got to dispel all this crap.
remember when I was about 18, a weird thing happened. My friend, who was my flatmate, he wrote his car off on the way to work. He was involved in a bad accident. And the moment that that happened, his sister, who lived miles away, 50 odd miles away, didn't see her that often. That no one had fallen out. They're all still friends, but she's doing her thing. I think she was a student nurse in London and out partying. And, they saw her Easter, Christmas, birthday, that kind of thing. The rest was an odd phone call, maybe once a month. Out of the blue, she rang his mum, like something like 8:30 in the morning, to say, "Is Richard all right?" And he, within 5 minutes, rang his mum to say, "I've just had a serious car accident. I'm mangled." Now he was all right when they got him out of the car. He was actually okay, just cut a few cuts and bruises, but the car was smashed to buggery. And she just out of the blue rung to see how he was. And I thought, is
Mm.
that's a really odd example that I remember. It's sort of talking to him about it. So I can't believe my sister rang. Like, how did she know? What do you think that's about? And I think
Yeah, of
that it happens all the time, doesn't it? We just don't, we
course.
dismiss it or think, well, that's a coincidence. And I don't think there are any coincidences in life,
No,
just
no,
patterns.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's the other thing. People write it off, right? Oh, it's just, they don't act on it or and it comes back to because they don't believe themselves, right? They don't believe the messages they're getting. They don't believe their gut feelings and stuff.
Mm,
And I think yeah, I think that's who we are. And I think all these
yeah.
are going to come back online, all these abilities. And that's when the programming drops away, right? And we start to see ourselves for who we
Mm,
really are, and that we're the controllers and the creators of our own destiny. And then, necessity, breeds invention, right?
yeah.
Like when you're out there and you need to, sort your shit because there's no society or, to go back to, run back to, maybe we'll start doing it. But I think, like the stuff they built, I think that, manifesting, if we want to use that word,
Yeah.
is a big part of it. And if this place is created, which, it seems to be, I believe it's created, um, who would create just a big world, right, with all these animals and weather and stuff and put humans in here and not give them clothes or a house or,
Mm,
get away from the animal. Like that's not like much of a creation, right? Like you'd create the cities and the stars and the domes and the healing places and because that's the experience. So that's what I think.
yeah. Yeah. You're quite right. And that's the bit that I think a lot of people don't think about, that if this God creates man and Adam and Eve, and then we've got people running around. What did they live in?
Yeah.
What did they? You've just created a species that needs shelter, that doesn't understand even how to eat or what to
Mm.
do, and you're just going to let them run around the world and fend
Yeah.
for themselves.
Yeah.
That it doesn't really make any sense.
It doesn't at all. So if the creator God, which I believe is good, did it, then yeah, I think he would have
Yeah,
sorted it out. But I
yeah,
think we've been overrun. There's an overlay, a spell being put over us by the Lord,
yeah,
right? The demiurge, the negative,
yeah.
and he's in control at the moment, but not for long. Not for
No.
long. I think it's
Out
all
of all
done.
of the sort of Antiquitech and Tartarian technology, do you have a favorite if you had to pick?
Oh, a favorite.
Hmm.
I mean, I find cathedrals interesting, but that's
Hmm.
sort of it together, isn't it? I mean, I guess the one that I've looked into the most is just the fact that energy, it's all the same thing, and we just see the different signatures of it everywhere. Like we see the geometry in the stars and the buildings, and we
Yeah.
see the color in like the rose windows in the cathedrals, and we
Hmm.
see the music, right? The sound through the choirs and the organs, and
Hmm.
then that can be shown through cymatics and
Yeah.
through oscilloscopes, and then we see the intention. It's the same shades through Dr. Emoto's work with the ice crystals and
Yeah.
mandalas that they draw, Tibetan monks and stuff. It's all this similar geometry, no, and all to match with the frequency. So I think it's just frequency all expressed in its different, various ways that it can be expressed, like light or color or sound
Yeah.
and I think that's the big giveaway that they were a frequency-based society. Everything was being based on the natural frequency, on what's already here, right? The natural
Yeah.
frequency and how they work and which is our frequency. We all know that they changed music from 432 to 440. So
Hmm.
they've messed with that. They took out the bells. They've done all this stuff. So they've attacked frequency too. It's high on their agenda. So yeah, I think that if anything, it's just the fact that it's all a frequency based, society. So I'm kind of trying to work out how it all interacts with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it all talked, didn't it? It was definitely all communicating. And I think a lot of people have now seen images going around on social media of the cathode RAL, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and the diagram of how it works, and so on. It's funny because with Tartarian technology, probably as recently as a year ago, I would have said, well, for me, it's the resonators and capacitors, and antennas on top of the roofs of these buildings, and were they using red mercury to store the energy in, and a huge copper coil inside them. But now, having sort of spent so much more time invested um, in architecture, that I think the most impressive part of Tartarian technology is behind you on the screen. And see, a year ago, I would have said the Star Fort is my favorite part of Tartarian architecture. But
Mm,
now, having looked into them more, I would say the Star Fort is my favorite form of
definitely.
Tartarian technology, because
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
all tech, isn't it? Everything they built.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It is like exactly. I mean, look at the shapes, right? It's a cymatic shape.
Mm,
And at the same time, it's structuring water and it's doing other things. And, it's probably a pump of some kind and all this, stuff. And the cathedral's in the middle. So, I mean, so I love Star Fort. So, my first video ever was on a Star Fort. And that's what really, blew my mind when I saw Star Forts and I started looking for them and started
mm,
finding them everywhere. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. How do we never get taught this stuff?
yeah,
And then, I've been lucky enough to be in gosh, four or five of them now, I think. And they're immense. That they're big, man. I mean, obviously, we get that, some of them are small, just the little simple sort of ones, but like the one like behind me, like they're massive.
Yeah, it's enormous, isn't it? There's one here near me, a place called Plymouth. It's called the Citadel. There is
That's
one
it.
here. Yeah, within an hour of where I am right now, there is a star fort, and you can go on tours around there. It's still used as some sort of military base, so some of it's closed to the public. I can't imagine which parts, but you can actually have a guided tour around there. And so it doesn't matter where you live, you are within a day's travel of a star fort. They are all across the world. They're everywhere.
Everywhere. They're everywhere, man. I've found them in Africa and Asia and Australia and all through Europe and the US,
Mm,
and like it's crazy. Like they're literally everywhere. And it's the same story as the red brick buildings. So how
mm,
did they build them all? And all so perfectly. I mean, you
yeah,
don't go halfway through a star fort and go, oh, whoops, we messed up the angle on that wall. Take it
yeah,
down.
exactly.
They're built perfectly first
Yeah,
time. Why I wonder,
absolutely.
were they just, manifested through energy, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, but
It's
yeah, I think they're amazing. And that's, yeah,
they're an anomaly, aren't they? They really are. There is no backstory to these that makes any sense whatsoever.
no, no, no. That's why they created Awful War, right? That's the only thing they can come up with. And,
Mm,
it's interesting, right? Like forts, soldiers charge out of them, right?
yeah, yeah, and often batteries. They're often called,
Batteries, yeah.
yeah, we see that in
We call
term.
them batteries.
Yeah.
So it's all in the spells. It's all in the spelling.
Do you have a favorite conspiracy theory of them all?
A favorite conspiracy theory. They change
Yeah.
so fast. I've been down so many rabbit holes. Um, I mean, at the moment it's interesting looking at the time thing, but I think, my favorite, like, I've been into alternative history like my whole life. Like literally I've been looking for answers in history since I can remember. So I would say that the biggest one is probably like the Earth grid, like, and the free energy. Um, and mainly because that's something that you can properly research yourself, right? Maybe
Yeah.
we should start calling it searching, right? Um, but and it's practical, and I think we've got a lot of evidence for it, and it's also it's like inspiring and happy, right? It's not a dark rabbit hole.
Mm,
Uh, so I think working out the whole Earth grid lines up, how do the stars interact with, everything, right? The cathedrals and the railway tracks and all the canals everywhere. Where are they coming in? All the architecture, the geometry you see in the ground, the big boulevards and the spires and the obelisks. And I'm sure they're all just different components for a big worldwide system, right? Circuit.
yeah.
And yeah, so that's probably my favorite, to research and everything. I mean, there's some
Mm.
interesting ones down there, like there's some fun ones like, the whole trans agenda and Big Mike and Barry and all that kind of always fun,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Um, but yeah, I definitely try to stay away from the dark ones, that's for sure. Like, I just sort of get a little bit of info on the dark ones. I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
that's enough for me. I'm going to go somewhere happier because
yeah. Keep
we
your
don't.
vibration higher.
Yeah, exactly. We don't need any
Yeah.
more shit. Enough bloody
No, we
crap
don't.
thrown at
They
us already.
flung. Yeah, we have enough flung at us. Got one last question for you.
Oh,
If you could bring someone back from the past for an hour to
jeez.
sit and interrogate, not or chat
Yeah.
to and ask questions, who would it be?
Wow. See, if I chose Tesla, I could get ripped off because he may not have existed.
Yeah, yeah. No one appears.
I mean, oh, gee, what about someone like Tamerlan, like one of the kings from Tartaria?
That's a good one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that would be fun. So he looks like he was a king that was reigning back in that
yeah,
time.
yeah. Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think someone like
Tamer the
that.
Lane. Yeah.
Name, yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Who would you
Yeah.
bring back? Oh,
Well, I often thought the Chancellor of Germany in the
I
late
will.
30s and early 40s would be a good one. But actually, I think it'd have to be Jesus,
Oh, well, you could get ripped off too.
Yeshua, or whatever, whoever the person is they are referring to
They
when they
both
say
got.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Could be a good one too.
Yeah. First question is,
We want to
are
get
any
the
of your
answer. Give me the answer.
name your descendants? I want to know the names of all living descendants right now, walking around.
Give me the
Any of them?
bloodline.
Yeah, give me your
Got the head
bloodline.
ready.
Yeah. I just realised how long we've been talking for.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
2 hours.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're having fun, mate.
It
Running it
certainly
quick.
does, my friend. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for joining me.
Thank
And
you.
I'll obviously a lot of people that watch my channel probably came to my channel from seeing me on yours. So I'll put a link in anyway. But I'm sure
Yeah.
most people will know who you are and where to find you and probably already following you, but I'll put a link in anyway. But thanks
Okay.
again, Campbell, for chatting to me.
Thanks for having me on. We'll have to do it again. I'm sure we
Yeah,
will.
yeah, I'm sure we will. Anyway, thanks a lot, mate. And
Awesome, mate. Thank you.
enjoy the rest of your evening.
I will. Have a good day.
Bye for now.